World of Warcraft Dragonflight launched in Q4 2022, introducing many exciting features such as a new continent to explore, new dungeons and raids, a talent and profession system revamp, and, of course, Dragonriding. However, the most promising change to come with this expansion is perhaps the things we got to leave behind in Shadowlands. No more Ouroboros, Chorghast runs, or Covenant skills to balance, not to mention the lack of a certain bare-chested 4D chess player. Hashtag jailer-free in 2023. That's right, Dragonflight has freed us from the maw and in a lot of ways renewed my sense of exploration while playing the game. But maybe that's just me. Either way, in this video, I hope to give an overview of what it's like to play WoW in 2023. Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about World of Warcraft Dragonflight in 2023. The goal of this video is to provide an overview of what it's like to play World of Warcraft in 2023. The video will be broken down into several sections that focus on specific features and/or distinct game modes. The video will then be concluded with a quick summary and my final thoughts about the value of this expansion and WoW as a whole in 2023. Now, without further ado, let's get into the first section. Dragonriding is certainly the poster feature of this expansion. I mean, the expansion is literally named Dragonflight, takes place in the Dragon Isles, and pretty much all marketing material has an image or video of someone riding a dragon. They were very confident in this system being a primary selling feature for the expansion, and I'd say it has largely delivered. Dragonriding is something that was introduced very early in the expansion leveling process and greatly increases the enjoyment of exploring these large and heavily vertical zones. This in itself is pretty big news, as a lot of the previous expansions have gone the route of locking flying of any kind behind lots of achievements and time gates, often only making it available once the zone it would be used in was irrelevant. In contrast, the ability to zoom around the map from quest to quest was a breath of fresh air, and really made the journey through the Dragon Isles a ton of fun. Now, of course, there is some negative when it comes to a new feature. I would say there are two primary complaints when it comes to Dragonriding. The first is the fact that this system was 110% inspired by the Guild Wars 2 mount system. Inspired might even be too lax of a term here, for some of the animations of the dragons seem explicitly close to those of the Guild Wars 2 mounts. My primary stance on this is that it is good for MMOs to take systems that have worked in other games and incorporate them into their own game. At the end of the day, this leaves MMO players with more games that have fun systems. I think the area that is fair for some people to take issue with is how close these animations are to the Blizzard models. I think that if Blizzard continues with this system, we will need to see them take it in their own original direction. For instance, if the next thing added to the system is a jumping rabbit or turtle combat mount, Blizzard will have some real explaining to do. The other negative aspect is that some people miss using their traditional flying mounts, and there is at least a big question about what happens to the system after Dragonflight. Do we go back to the old system, which, let's be honest, will feel like agony after having experienced this, or do we just stick with this new system and never really have a use for all those cool flying mounts we collected over the years? There's no clear answer, and I think this will be a really big decision for Blizzard to eventually make. It's a tricky one because, like most of their decisions, the final result will likely leave some people very happy and others very upset. It's hard to talk about Dragonriding without talking about the Dragon Isles. These maps were clearly designed with the intention of making the Dragonriding system work. Some examples of this include the maps being significantly larger than the maps we have seen in previous expansions, and the inclusion of many high-altitude hubs. The larger maps allow for the increased flight speed of the dragons to be more meaningful when traveling long distances, and the high-altitude hubs allow players to generate a lot of velocity while embarking on their travels. The best example of this is the main Dragonflight city, Valdrakken, which has a very tall tower that players can teleport to the top of before flying off to their destinations. In addition to the design of these maps, the dragon races and dragon glyphs spread throughout the Dragon Isles further encourage players to use their dragons to explore new and interesting locations. The races are very easy to identify on your maps as they have their own icons and allow players to restart the race by simply hitting a button. The courses put the player's skills to the test, making use of many of the Dragonriding abilities that players will learn on their way to max level. The tokens also encourage exploration, as some of them are located in areas that players won't accidentally travel to. This gives players a reason to explore all areas of the map, and injects a little bit of exploration that has been lacking from some of the most recent expansions. One of the most anticipated system revamps for Dragonflight was the revamped talent trees. This system brought back talent trees reminiscent of classic WoW with some modern tweaks. All classes have a base class talent tree as well as spec talent trees. The players get points each level to spend in one of these two trees. This typically alternates with you receiving a point for your class tree and then one for your spec tree. The trees are designed in such a way that you will need to make meaningful decisions between some talents you are able to bring, and others you'll sadly have to leave unselected. This system does a really good job of injecting the sensation of ongoing progression back into the leveling experience. Receiving a point every level gives you something to always be looking forward to. Additionally, some more modern features such as build templates and the ability to copy build codes from online resources or simply copy builds from in-game players gives a lot of ease of use to the players. Overall, I think the system has done a great job of recapturing a lot of depth that the old systems brought while introducing a lot of modern conveniences. In addition to the talent system revamp, the profession system also received a massive overhaul heading into Dragonflight. This one's interesting because is where every single player is going to be impacted by the talent tree revamp. Only people who use and really care about the professions are going to be impacted by this change. With that, I think the WoW team was much more confident in developing a system with more complexity and mystery. And with that in mind, they definitely delivered. Professions now have their own specializations, talent trees, and gear. There are specific stats and leveling paths that will greatly impact the recipes you have access to and the quality of items you are able to create. And more than anything, there's a significant level of investment required to reach your maximum ability with any profession. More to this, your decisions can't be easily undone, and if you find that you have ventured far down one specialization but really want the perks of another, you could be out of luck for a while. Ultimately, this revamp has added a significant level of progression and depth to most of the professions, but can feel a bit complicated and unfriendly for those that just enjoy experimenting with professions casually. The final system that was also added alongside the professions revamp is the work orders market. This is similar to the auction house, but allows players to post requests for specific crafting services. This system has been a bit of a hit or miss at this point, and I feel like Blizzard will be doing some tweaking to how it works in order to get more players using the system. However, when you do find an item you want to have crafted, collect all the components, and finally send off a work order to be filled, it can feel fairly satisfying. It also has allowed Blizzard to be more creative with the powers that some crafted items have, knowing that players can rely on other players to craft these powerful items for them. PvE content is relatively similar to recent expansions, with raids, Mythic Plus dungeons, and open world quests, bosses, and events being the key pieces of content. The real plus of Dragonflight is that there isn't experimental pieces of content that players are forced to do for some kind of power gain. Looking at you, Torghast and Island Expeditions. This can make it feel like there are less activities for some people to do in Dragonflight, but more than anything, I think it just allows players to focus their time on the most engaging PvE activities, such as dungeons and raids. One of the new features of Dragonflight is how they are releasing the new dungeons that came with the expansion. There are a total of 8 new dungeons, which is similar to past expansion launches, with all 8 of them being available on normal, heroic, and mythic difficulties fairly early on in the expansion's launch. Where things get different is at the Mythic Plus level. Instead of having all 8 of these dungeons be Mythic Plus dungeons for the rest of the expansion, only 4 of the dungeons are Mythic Plus dungeons in Season 1, with a mixture of dungeons from old expansions filling the remaining 4 slots. Then, as we move into Season 2, the 4 Dragonflight dungeons will be swapped with the remaining 4 Dragonflight dungeons, and another set of 4 old dungeons will be added to the pool as well. These old dungeons can come from expansions as old as MOP so far, and this is really what has me super excited about the feature. Yes, having the dungeon pool swap every season will be a huge thing in terms of reducing burnout, but the idea of possibly seeing a Wrath Mythic Plus dungeon one day is huge. It seems like Blizzard is finally looking at meaningful ways to bring old content to the current tier, beyond just having them in a time-walking queue for leveling or catch-up gear. Overall, the PvE systems in Dragonflight look very promising, especially with Blizzard renewing a focus on delivering the best dungeon and raid experience possible. PvP content has also remained fairly similar to recent expansions, with the main forms of content being battlegrounds, arenas, and raided battlegrounds. The big new feature for Dragonflight is the solo shuffle ranked arena queue. This system allows individual players to queue into ranked arenas for the first time ever. These match types take 6 players, 4 DPS and 2 healers, and then have them fight against each other for 6 rounds. The players who win the most of these rounds will gain rating, while the players who lose the most will lose rating. This is a huge step in terms of accessibility to ranked PvP for WoW, but does come with some issues. There was a large problem with people leaving mid-game at the start of the expansion. This has since been somewhat resolved by some hotfixes, but there is still problems around the length of queue for DPS players depending on your MMR. I've almost never had a queue under 15 minutes as a DPS player, and frequently have queues that go as long as 30 minutes plus. I think the system is a great foundation for the game, and I'm excited to see what they do next in terms of implementation. I also think solo queue rated battlegrounds could be a very exciting addition. Other items of note for PvP include the gearing system in Dragonflight. Unlike recent expansions, your PvP gear is fully upgraded in PvP once you purchase it. This means all you have to do is purchase a set of honor gear and then some conquest gear, and you're fairly set up. There are tier pieces once again that can take longer to acquire, which isn't ideal. Hopefully future seasons will see the tier piece catalysts introduced from the start of the season instead of 1 to 2 months into the season. Well, there we go. That's a brief look at the state of Dragonflight in 2023. The real question is whether or not the current expansion offerings appeal to you and your playstyle. I would say the current expansion focuses on the core pillars of WoW, with an emphasis on leveling, exploration through the Dragonriding system, dungeons, raids, and PvP. So if you're someone who has enjoyed WoW in the past, there is a good chance that you will like what this expansion has to offer. As mentioned above, one of the big pluses for this expansion are the things that you aren't forced to do, such as Torghast, island expeditions, unlocking flying through massive time-gated achievements, etc. Lastly, you get access to Wrath Classic for the same price as your retail subscription, so if you're someone interested in Dragonflight who also wouldn't mind revisiting Wrath, you will probably find a lot of value in the current game's offering. As always, thanks for watching. My name is Csaw, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.